So what do you expect for this team in the second half?
Yeah, I think starting in the second half, I would expect them to come out of the All-Star break, with more of a direction. I really felt like the first half, if you will, because again, it should be said, we're not at the halfway point of the season. Before we have this conversation, everybody needs to understand we're not at the halfway point of the season. We're well past the halfway point
That's
of the
right.
season. Just so we're all on the same page about that. But when I look at the first half of the season, as I'll call it, before the All Star break. I really felt like this season before the All Star break was full of adversity, was full of hurdles, was full of issues that this team hasn't really experienced before together. Like this grouping of guys that has been pretty successful up to this point, in terms of basketballing. You think about it, they're a team that has gotten to the second round several times, but now obviously the conversation has shifted to moving past that. So when you look at this time leading up to the All-Star break, I really felt like, the Jazz had kind of, they had a 4 or 5 game stretch here where you felt really good going into the All-Star break. You won some games,
Lost to the
you lost
Lakers.
to the Lakers, but you overall, I felt like they were in a better spot heading into the All-Star break. So coming out of the All-Star break, I really would expect at a minimum for this team to really be more organized mentally and culturally in the locker room and with the direction they're going. Like I would expect that, coming out of the All-Star break that you're being rested and everything, that you would be playing better basketball, that you would
Right.
be shooting the three ball at a higher percentage, that you would just be playing the best brand of Jazz basketball that we all know and love, which ultimately, to me, in my opinion, what that is, ball movement until you get that open look from three, or you're running pick and roll and you're feeding Rudy in the lob game. Those are the two areas where I feel like sometimes the Jazz kind of get away from that. A lot of times I feel like Rudy's going to come up and set a pick. They're going to use that pick, but then they kind of get lost in this mud
Yeah.
of offense. So I
Yeah.
would expect coming out of the All-Star break, they'd be more organized. They'd be more intentional about the offense they're running. And then defensively, I feel like there just has to be more effort all around. Donovan has said several times heading into the break and over the break that, it starts with defense and he needs to put more effort in on both ends of the floor. So I would expect Donovan Mitchell to, play good defense, to put a lot of effort in, to be giving his level best. As for the team, that's my question. What does level best look like? What does level best on defense look like for a guy like Bogdanovich? What does level best look like for, your young guys in Forrest and Butler if he ever
Well, I
gets
don't know.
minutes?
What does that look like? I think one of the biggest questions is, will Quinn Snyder play the young guys?
Yeah.
And I think it's been one of the most hotly contested talking points amongst Jazz fans is, will Jared Butler get more minutes than Trent Forrest? Because it would seem very clear to me that the backup point guard spot on this roster is a huge question mark for the rest of this season, especially with Mike Conley's history of injury. When we jokingly say water's wet and Mike Conley's hurt in the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
well, if he gets hurt, you're going, point Don,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, at this point,
Which
that's
hasn't been bad. I think we haven't seen,
no,
up leading into the All Star break was really the first time we had seen a ton of point Don, and I think that point Don is not bad for this basketball team. But I do agree with you that, you don't. I mean, this has been the debate with like LeBron for all these years, right? LeBron as a Cavalier when they went and won that title, what it was point Bron, and he was running the team, and that's what allowed them to have success. But that also changes the way you're going to run offense. So the Jazz, my point is that Donovan Mitchell is not LeBron James, right? Donovan Mitchell is not on his level. Nobody is. LeBron's like a
sure,
greatest of all time guy. So
yeah.
for the Jazz, point Don, I think, is a really interesting conundrum. I want the ball in Donovan Mitchell's hands. I want him making decisions out there. He's the best player on the team. But at the same time, as we've talked about several times on this show over the last couple of weeks, Don has to make the correct decision based on what the defense gives him. And that right there, when he comes off the screen, do they show him a double team? He's got to pass that instead of keeping it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of questions about, Donovan Mitchell, and there was another report over the weekend, which again, the best thing that I can say is that I totally disagree with it, but that Donovan Mitchell is one of the three players along with Damian Lillard and Zion Williamson, that are going to demand trades in the offseason. And I think for the Utah Jazz, in the current scenario we find this ball club in, that doesn't make a lot of sense for Donovan Mitchell to demand a trade.
Dangerous misinformation.
I mean, yeah, I don't see that happening yet. If this is a very quiet summer where not much goes on, okay, then I could see it happening next year. But I don't think Donovan Mitchell is a guy that's looking to demand a trade. And nothing he said in the interview with Tony Jones over the weekend that came out yesterday, nothing he said in that interview would make you believe that he's going to demand a trade. I mean, frankly, I think what we've seen out of Donovan Mitchell when he's talked to the media, and from what we've heard around NBA sources around the league, is that Donovan just wants to win. And I don't think there's any question that this franchise is in flux right now. There's a lot of change coming to the Utah Jazz in the next probably 6 months. So I think the next, this offseason, this summer is going to be critical to Don's long-term viability as a Jazz man.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
Yeah, but I don't see Donovan Mitchell demanding a trade right now. I don't see him saying, look, Ryan, look, Danny, look, Justin Zanuck, I'm out. I don't want to be here. I again will reiterate, everybody I've spoken to, and it's at least half a dozen people, have denied that Donovan Mitchell has ever told the Utah Jazz, hey, my brand's too big for Salt Lake City, or I'm too big a star to be here. Nobody has ever heard that from Donovan Mitchell. All Donovan Mitchell has said is pretty much exactly what he said to Tony Jones, which is, I want to win multiple championships. All that matters is winning. Frankly, he's never said it's Rudy or me. That was reported over the All-Star break that Donovan was telling the Jazz that if, Rudy's here, I'm not. Like that, I don't believe that's ever happened.
Yeah.
I have not heard that even one time. I think the things that we have consistently heard, and Jazz sources have confirmed for us, is that Donovan Mitchell wants to win, and he has told them, I want to win multiple championships. And Ryan Smith told him, we're going to do everything we can do to make that happen. That we will spare no expense, and we are going to rebuild this team around you. And if I'm Donovan Mitchell, I'm thrilled with that.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely thrilled with that. So my whole point is that all this nonsense that, Don's demanding a trade and he's too big for the market, that's just not accurate.
Whoever came up with that shit need to be fired.
I think what the second half of the season is about is creating the superstar Donovan Mitchell. And I think you're already seeing that being on the ball gives him a lot more opportunity to impact the outcome of games. And when I say being on the ball, I don't mean shooting more. I mean, when you get over half court, or, even if Mike Conley's out of the game, Don's bringing the ball up.
Yeah. Don's
initiating the offense. Don is driving, kicking. He's shooting a lot. He's shooting threes a lot. He's shooting threes very well. But what you're seeing is that Donovan Mitchell's influence on the floor is growing. So what will that lead to? More influence off the floor.
Right.
Is what that will lead to. So I think this is a very critical moment in time for the Utah Jazz. You have never had a star in the modern era of Jazz basketball. And maybe the right way to say that is post Stockton and Malone. You have never had a star the caliber of Donovan Mitchell. And it would be a real shame if Danny Ainge and Ryan Smith couldn't figure it out to the point where Donovan Mitchell believes that he could win a championship here. Because right now, and whether you like this show or not, I've been telling you for 2 years this is not a championship team.
Yeah.
And it is not. And the roster construction has not changed almost at all. And frankly, up until the Joe Ingles trade, it hadn't changed at all.
Yeah.
In the core. And the Joe Ingles trade is the only move that really has impacted the regular rotation on this team.
Yeah.
But what impact, and the fact that he was injured likely didn't change the trajectory of that trade. Not change what you were getting in return for him, but he was going to be traded anyway. It was not a significant move at the end of the day. I think that's what's frustrating.
Well, yeah, and I think there were people who were, I'm not going to say disappointed, but they were surprised by the Jazz lack of, deal making at the deadline. Honestly, that we've heard that, and I think that, it's funny that you say that the rest of the season is about making Donovan Mitchell, or turning him into the superstar that we all think that he can be, and that he thinks he can be. I think that's spot on, and it's funny, like it almost feels like the rest of this year, regardless of what their record is or how far they go into the postseason, it's like this is like the last hurrah for this group, and then this summer, I mean, it's just going to get lit up, and I think that if you're Donovan Mitchell, obviously you're not worried about being traded, but I think that you're saying, okay, this is my time to kind of develop, because I understand that this roster for 2 years hasn't been championship caliber, and if I'm Donovan Mitchell, and this is what I try to do, I mean, put yourself in Don's shoes, you are somebody who works with Chris Brickley consistently, which has opened up your game and brought you a skill set that allows you to dominate and take over games.
Yep.
So how can you take that skill set and leverage it to get your front office to bring you talent to win a championship? And that's what's happening.
Well, and I think the other thing is I don't believe that it's 100% incumbent on Don to do that on his own. I think that Donovan Mitchell does everything that you want Donovan Mitchell to do. And again, for better or for worse, whether you believe he shoots too much, whether you want to pick Rudy over Donovan, whatever your thought process is, you cannot leave Donovan hanging on an island to develop himself. You have to clearly communicate expectations. Same thing for Rudy Gobert. If you are not clearly communicating to Rudy Gobert, we need you to develop more of an offensive skill set.
Yeah.
Whether that is you want him to shoot a mid-range, whether that is, hey, we need you to play back to the basket, which is what I would have him do. I would be having him build the ability to dribble, the ability to, I would have him all day long working on catching the lob, catching that ball into the post, feed the post, work with your back to the basket. Just give me a turnaround. It infuriates me to no end to watch Rudy Gobert talk about and hear Rudy Gobert talking about wanting to participate in the three-point contest next year. That is ridiculous. Why? What is that going to do for a team that already is near the top in the league in three-pointers taken per game?
Come on, man.
What is that going to do for, those are the things that infuriate you. And how you apply that to how will this team finish, if this team's going to be a 55-win team, which I think is probably their max at this point, I think that would just be an incredible run to end the season.
Yeah.
If this team's going to go on some improbable, incredible run,
18 of 20.
If that's going to happen, if they're going to win 19 games the rest of the year, and having looked at the schedule last night, I think it's possible. If this team's going to win that kind of percentage, they are going to need Rudy Gobert to be his level best the entire rest of the way.
Yeah.
They are going to need the role players on this team to take a significant step forward. They will need guys like Royce. They're going to need Mike Conley to be as close to 100% as he can be the rest of the way, or they're going to fall behind the Mavericks, because the Mavericks don't have a difficult schedule.
Yeah.
And frankly, the way Luka's playing right now, he's in that mode where you feel like just about everything's going in. So if they're going to stay out of that 5 spot and have home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs, because right now I don't see any way that this team, frankly, it's just my opinion, I don't see any way that they catch the Memphis Grizzlies, because the Grizzlies are a full 4 games ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have to win just about every game.
You'd have to play like 900 basketball. You just would.
Yeah. And I just think when you've played 58 games of 82, I think that I think that makes it very difficult.
Yeah, and I think that the Grizzlies, it's no secret the Grizzlies are a young team as well. They're obviously maturing and they're a damn good team now, but my point is that they have young legs on them. I mean, they're not going to run out of gas, or they're not going to, the injury stuff isn't going to come to that team as much as it would to the Jazz, just based on age and mileage. And I think that that's no slight to the Jazz. I think that's just the reality of the situation right now. And this is something that we've been talking about and that the Jazz have been addressing most of the year. I mean, again, we can't forget. I know it seems so long ago at this point, but you can't forget, heading into the season, what was the mantra on Mike Conley? He's not playing back-to-backs, whether we're going to rest him on the front half and play him on the back or vice versa. He's not playing those those back-to-backs early in the year. And so, I look at what's going down in Phoenix. Chris Paul's going to miss a significant amount of time, like 6 to 8 weeks with this hand thing. And I don't want Mike Conley to suffer that same fate because they ran him into the ground trying to play, 850 or 900 basketball so that they can keep home court advantage. I mean, I think your best option as a team right now is to play the best basketball you can, of course, but it's no secret to Jazz fan, this team has to be healthy in the first postseason series to really have any chance. You can't be playing without Mike Conley or, without Don, for example, or whatever, without any of the mainstays on this team. So I think if I'm the Jazz, the rest of the way, Quinn Snyder down. I think it's a different view for the front office, but Quinn Snyder down in the day-to-day, I'm prioritizing health. I'm prioritizing making sure that we're not going too hard in practice, but we're also getting our prep good. Like, being strategic with how much mileage you're putting on these guys so that when the moment arrives, when you're playing the Clippers at Crypto.com
When the
Arena,
moment arrives, you don't
ready.
need Cialis.
Yeah, dude, you're ready. That's what has to happen this year. And I
Guy,
think
that was a dick pill joke I just made, and you didn't even stop or hesitate.
I'm right in the heat of my take, and you're making dick pill jokes.
That is true. I am.
Sorry if you're offended by that.
Yeah, suck it. The point is,
Wow.
The other thing that I think is really important that we have to talk about here is they're going to have to find a way to be better defensively, and you know who I'm going to talk about. Donovan Mitchell has to continue to play defense the way he did on that last homestand.
Well, and I think he's embracing it now.
Yeah, his defense was significantly better.
Yeah.
Significantly better. And if it is true that while he was injured and out, that he spent a lot of time in self-reflection and, supposedly, and I thought one of the great things that came out of that article was, Tony Jones of The Athletic, and if you don't subscribe to The Athletic and you don't read Tony, I think you're crazy. But he kind of confirmed a couple of things that we had reported, that Donovan does his best development on his own. He is a guy who spends a lot of time by himself, thinking, being with his thoughts, being with his feelings. Like, he's not somebody who reaches out and is like, hey, bro, I'm really struggling with my defense. Talk me through. Like, Donovan is a big picture thinker in his own mind. And I think we've always known, well, recently we've known that. And I think one of the things we've seen is that his defensive want to has been significantly higher since he was injured. Mm-hmm. And since he was not able to play that stretch of games with the concussion, I think his defensive want to has gotten much better. And I think what you're seeing is part of that is I do think this rub with Rudy Gobert has changed him. I think this situation where he and Rudy, it's out in public knowledge now.
Yeah, it's not a question.
I mean, it's no longer just us telling you that those two don't have a relationship. And again, it's not that they hate each other. They don't have a relationship.
I'm going to say this again.
So when a guy that you don't like is pointing the finger at you, mm-hmm. it's going to sting you a little harder. And I think that's part of what happened here. I don't, by any stretch of the imagination, want you to conflate the idea that I'm saying what Rudy did worked, because I think what Rudy Gobert did not work. I think Rudy calling guys out in the locker room, pointing at Royce O'Neal on the floor in the Laker game the other night, was a huge mistake. I think that Rudy really undermined a lot of the good things that he had built on this team by doing that. Rudy has to be a better teammate than that. But I think what it's done is it's put Donovan into a place where he's stepped up a little bit here into leadership. And I think one of the things he realizes very clearly is you cannot lead when you don't act. You cannot lead without the ability to demonstrate that leadership.
Performance is everything. Let's be really clear about
it.
This.
It is.
It's
but
everything.
When it's defensive.
Yeah.
Offense, nobody's questioning Donovan Mitchell. Nobody. His offensive game is without question.
Yeah.
He's the best offensive player that you've had for 20 years.
Yeah.
You look at his defense, and as a lot of listeners on the show have talked about, and viewers on the show have mentioned, Donovan's effort on defense is consistently questioned because it's weak ass.
Yeah.
It's weak ass. And I think over that last homestand, we saw two things. He absolutely stepped his effort up on defense. And some of that was Rudy was not in the game with this calf injury.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that we're seeing Donovan Mitchell understanding, hey, this is who I am and this is where I am. If I want to get to that next level, and if I'm going to be the guy, because the other thing I've consistently heard is that Donovan Mitchell realizes he's got to be the guy to pull the team.
Yes.
He's got to pull the rope along. He
Yes.
knows that now. And he knows that, but he's also embraced that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what you're seeing is Donovan passing more because he knows he's got to get everybody else involved more.
Well, and I think at the core, he's making the choice that we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, I
He's
agree with
making
that.
the choice of, hey, no matter what it is, whether it's the passing, whether it's the defense, whether it's teammate relations, let's say, he's making the choice to say, okay, it really isn't up to me whether I am or I am not the leader. I am the leader. It has
Yes.
been like it is me whether I like it or not, basically. So I need to make the choice to embrace that and lead this team and pull this team along. And I think that what's so exciting about that for me is and I know we compare them all the time, and you guys do too, but we saw this same process play out in Phoenix with Devin Booker.
Yes.
Literally the exact same process. Booker was criticized to no end for his defense. He was criticized to no end for his lack of the clutch gene in the postseason, his first go around with it. Like there was a lot of stuff said about Devin Booker, but then what do you get? You see him making a choice to play better defense.
Yes.
You see him in the summer putting all this time into his body so that, he doesn't have to deal with a meniscus thing or this or that. And so then what happens? He makes that choice, just like Donovan's made that choice. And then his front office goes out and brings in Chris Paul, just like we surmise and hope that the front office will go out this summer and make a big move. And that's why it's so exciting to me to see the parallels between these two. Are they rivals, or are they, two teams that contend for the Western Conference? Well, yes, of course. But I think when you look at, as a Jazz fan, when you look at where this team is going, right, even if they get bounced out of the postseason in the first round this year, let's say, there are still a ton of positives around what this team is doing. And I think you can't lose sight of that, because there is this, I feel like Jazz fans do sometimes operate with a cloud over their head. And you got to understand, this is a process to get to where you want to go.
But I still think that this is not a championship caliber team.
No.
And
No.
you can't win, and this is just my opinion, but you cannot win a championship with Rudy Gobert's situation.
And again, it should be said, this show has been saying that for like 2 years now. I mean, it's not a secret, and the league agrees with it now. And the front office clearly agrees with it now. Now, will they make a trade with Rudy involved? I don't know, but I think they understand at a minimum, if Rudy's going to be on this team, they got to have a ton more talent on the wing.
Which you can't do when you're paying Rudy Gobert 35% of your salary cap.
So that's the conundrum.
Yeah, so it's difficult. Listen, I think there's no doubt that there's a lot of questions to be asked and answered in the offseason. And I maintain, I think you're probably 60-40 going to make a change with Quinn Snyder. I think stylistically, I think that's the other part of the conversation with this roster that we haven't had yet. In the second half, your style has to change, right? With these last, 25 games, if you're really going to go 19-5, because I think that's their maximum. I think that's absolutely the best record this team could hope for.
Right.
That Suns game on Sunday is a must-win.
Huge.
No Chris Paul. He's out 6 to 8 weeks with a broken thumb.
Got to have it.
That's a must-win, right? But if you're going to go 19-5, stylistically, you can't keep playing the way you've been playing. You cannot continue to feed out all the defense into Rudy Gobert. It's a great player. It's a great defender. I get it. But this team has to be individually better defensively.
Yeah.
And I don't know that 90% of the guys on this roster are capable. I think one of the real questions is, what adjustments is Quinn Snyder going to come out of the All-Star break with? How many more minutes is Eric Paschall going to get? Because I just don't think at this point you can count on Rudy Gay to be a go.
Yeah.
I think that Rudy has been dealing with heel and knee issues.
Even when he has been a go, though. I mean, it's not like Rudy Gay has been some firecracker off the bench.
Well, he shot the three really well. I mean, he's fit into what you do offensively, but defensively has been the biggest question.
That's not why let's remember this, though. I think this is an important point. You didn't bring Rudy Gay here to shoot the three. You brought him here to play small ball at the 5.
I would agree.
That's his purpose on this roster. Do I agree that he shot the 3 well? Well, yeah, absolutely. When he was healthy, he was shooting the 3 well, and he gave them a nice little pop while he was available. But I think that, Eric Paschall's toughness and his willingness to take the hard foul, his willingness to fight for the rebound that a lot of guys on this team are not willing to fight for. I would love to see Paschall get somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes a night. No, not more than 20, but 15 to 20, anywhere in there, I think is the sweet spot.
Especially against a team like Phoenix is a really good example. You're going to have to figure out how to beat Phoenix with Rudy off the floor because there's not – the problem is that they run so many different kind of centers at you. If that's Bismack Biyombo on the low block, okay, Rudy's got a place. I think he can handle, obviously, DeAndre Ayton. But when they go to that smaller lineup and you see everybody from Jay Crowder to, you see all these guys passing out of the post, it makes it difficult for Rudy to have a real effective place in the lineup.
Well, and they just brought Torrey Craig back
and
to Phoenix.
I think that guys again, I will just look at their 3 best players. Now, Chris Paul's out 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, throw him out. Look at their 2 best players, Mikal Bridges and Devin Booker, right? You don't have a defensive answer. And on offense, both of those guys, Devin Booker has stepped his offensive game up significantly.
Yeah.
Right? So you ask yourself now, well, what's the matchup? How do you, if you are the Utah Jazz, how do you deploy offense to beat what the Suns do defensively? I don't think you have that because they're quicker and they're stronger than you, and they shoot the 3 at pretty much the same level that you do.
Yeah.
And the other issue is if you're going to use Rudy in the high screen and roll, they have the bodies to defend that. So that's why this game is so critical. Without Chris Paul, it gives you a chance to beat the Suns and feel good about yourself.
Well, and that high pick and roll game you talk about would be, and again, not to rain on Rudy's parade, but when you're playing really good teams, this is where that elbow jumper we always talk about would be really, really nice to have out of Rudy Gobert, because then think about it. You've got Don with the ball at the top of the key. Rudy comes and set the pick. He uses the pick, and now he's got options, and the defense doesn't know what he's going to do. Imagine a world where DeAndre Ayton has to respect Rudy's jumper from the elbow, not a 3, but just a quick little elbow push shot or jumper. And, he's got to respect that as a defender. So now he's playing Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert with his helper trailing behind the play. That is what breeds great NBA offense. And so when you don't have the jumper, DeAndre Ayton suddenly is not so scared of shading towards Donovan Mitchell, knowing he can get back. And that's why I say when you're watching these games, it's not just that Rudy can't shoot or he doesn't really have an offensive game. It's how that affects the Jazz and what the defense does to the Jazz. That's really what you got to look for.
Their role players are exceptional.
Yeah.
The Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
They run 3 centers at you, Ayton, JaVale, and Bismack. You look at what they're getting from a guy like a Cam Johnson who puts up 15 on Milwaukee in that win.
They've brought a guy like Cam Johnson to life. Cam, ESPN.
Yeah,
running again.
Man.
Come on.
Auto ads.
Come on. But look what they did with a guy like a Cam Johnson, and even Cam Payne. I mean, both of those guys are guys who, they drafted Cam Johnson. They've developed him and brought him along. Cam Payne is a guy who was almost out of the league. Like, people didn't want this guy. They signed him for a pretty cheap contract, and now all of a sudden he's giving them whatever. I'd have to look at his season averages, but typically, he's a 10 to 15 point a night guy. He can do that for you.
And even when he's been injured, they've been able to adjust to that.
Yeah.
Even, because you're getting a few minutes out of Peyton. You're getting a few minutes. You're stealing a few minutes here and there. And you're getting, again, this is who the Jazz need to become.
Yeah.
Developers of young talent, really good veterans. What the Suns get out of JaVale McGee, that's the difference maker.
Yeah, it's wild.
And by the way, what do the Suns have that the Jazz don't? They have guys who have won rings. Mm-hmm. They have guys who've competed at the top of the league. Like, even just having JaVale McGee, now that your whole roster essentially has been through the NBA Finals and run through the Western Conference, and you've been in big moments, it's naturally going to make you better.
Yeah.
So anyway, here nor there, let's get some of your comments in here because I know that there's a lot of you here. Appreciate that. Please give us a thumbs up. You guys have really supported this show. Hitting like on our videos makes a huge difference because it puts it out there in the algorithm. More people see the videos when you like and give us a thumbs up. So please do that. We are rapidly approaching 5,000 followers on TikTok, as well as 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. When we get there, we're going to give away an Xbox, or excuse me, we're going to give away a PS5 that's back at the crib.
You're sitting at home waiting for someone.
Also, by the way, don't forget, Jake's going to hold up our You're a Casual t-shirt. That is available to you for $25. Just DM us. We have a full size range available, all the way from small, because a lot of people asked us about smalls. Smalls all the way up to 3X are available. In the You're a Casual shirt, just DM Jake or I. Jake is SLC Supercars on all social platforms. You can find me, The Monty Show, Monty, The Monty Show.
Do
okay,
it.
so let's talk. Jeremy Bolton says, "Sup, fellas, you're missing some epic snow here in Utah." I know. Of course, Jeremy, we leave, and what happens? It snows. Bummer. The Blind Swordsman says, "I found a dude on Twitter who is a bigger casual than you. Just kidding. He thinks we should trade Donovan over Rudy."
You're casual.
I mean, there's a lot of people. I think the thing that you need to understand is there's a lot of people that would rather have Rudy than Donovan.
Wow.
And I think it's crazy.
Yeah.
I think I've covered this league a long time, and I'm telling you now that you don't win championships in 2022 and beyond with centers who don't have an offensive game.
Too bad.
Like you win centers with elite wings, and that's what Donovan Mitchell is. Donovan Mitchell, I just cannot tell you how special of a talent he is. And he's not been in an atmosphere where he's been wholly developed.
Yeah.
His growth has been largely on his own. And I'm telling you now, I think Donovan Mitchell is the one that gets away from you if he leaves here.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to happen. I think 5 years from now, Donovan will still be a Utah Jazz man.
We'll see.
I do. Because I believe in Ryan Smith and Danny Ainge. I believe that they will do what needs to be done to get him to stay here. And I think this offseason, this summer, will determine if my belief is that you can win 2 or 3 championships in the next 5 years. That'll be determined this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And Donovan's fate and future will be determined this summer. Rudy's fate and future will be determined this summer. And if you choose Rudy Gobert, I think you are choosing a pain train.
Yeah.
Because Don will not be here long term.
Yeah.
I think you need to build this roster around him. So I don't disagree with you, Blind Swordsman, at all. Tau Unga says, "Hella snowy here in Utah." Thank you. Brylark says, "What's up, boys? Can't wait till Rudy isn't on the roster." Edgar Garcia says, "You're alive. Good morning, players."
Hello.
Hello. Steve Hambone says, "Good morning, guys. Let's go Jazz. I think we're going to go for a winning streak to the playoffs." I think 19-5
Well, I think
is your best, highest result.
what everyone's hoping for and what all the media is talking about is the 2018 team.
Yes.
And what that team did. And I'm telling you that this team can do what that team did, but it's not good enough just to be healthy. It's not good enough just to have all your guys on the floor and roll up and think that that's going to be good enough. I got news for you. The Western Conference is better now than it was then. Teams are playing better basketball even without the Jamal Murrays of the world, right? You're playing better basketball even without Anthony Davis, as you guys found out the other night. So,
Who?
yeah, no.
Anthony.
What? See, why do you
Street
why do you
clothes
do this to
Davis.
me? Why do you do this to me? Now I got to go and find it.
After the street closed down?
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. So my point just is this team can do what the 2018 team did, but it's going to take a very strategic and intentional strategy out of Quinn Snyder and this roster to do what that team did.
They're going to have to get exponentially younger and more lateral movement.
And they're going to have to shoot the 3-ball the rest of this year at 40%. Like,
Yeah.
if they need to do that.
I don't see that happening. I just don't. And Garcia says the Jazz have never really been known for playing the young guys. I would agree with that. Conley and Chris have the same issues. Jeremy Bolton says they do.
Agreed.
And Garcia says Donovan, no D, Mitchell, and Zion, if he gets healthy, will be in New York in under 5 years.
No D. Mitchell.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Are there any groups or organizations that would benefit from Donovan leaving Utah? Because could those groups be putting this out there to try and force Donovan out? I think one of the things that is an issue for Donovan Mitchell is that, and he talked about this on the Chris Haynes podcast, it was not well received when he spoke up for voter rights in this state.
Mm-hmm.
It has not been well received when he has talked about issues facing minorities in the community.
Facts.
And you know, it's funny. We've talked about this a lot. One of the things that is interesting about living in Utah is when you visit a place like California for 2 weeks and you see brown skin and you see, you know, Latinos, you see blacks, you see Asians, you see this wonderful mix of cultures.
This is fucking America.
That you don't see in Utah, and you realize just how white of a state and a region that Salt Lake City is.
Yep.
And you understand why when Donovan sees things that, you know, he wants to be involved in the community, and then everybody pushes back against him, and he sees the Utah Jazz trying to serve underserved communities with scholarships, and you see people pushing back against that, it would be frustrating for him. He is a proud black man.
Come on, man.
And he's trying to make an impact in our community, and there's a large swath of our community who doesn't want him to have an impact. There's a large swath of our community that would love him to shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, that's a huge part of why he would leave here.
Sorry if you're offended by that.
I still think the biggest factor in him leaving here is that he wants to win. But when we talk about, well, nobody will sign here as a free agent, how do you think it looks to other black NBA athletes when they see a state like Utah that's got tons of stereotypes about it, and they see a young black star trying to have an impact in his community, and they see an organization that is moving mountains to send underprivileged communities to college.
Yeah.
And the rest of the community is pushing back.
It's not a good look.
It's not a good look at all.
Yeah.
And
It's not a good
so
look.
you understand that this is not just about, well, guys won't sign here. Because there's a large part of the guys won't sign here community pushing back against Donovan and pushing back against the organization trying to give out scholarships to underprivileged communities.
Okay, so that's how it's gonna be.
Which are largely minorities.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just this whole conversation. For NBA players anymore, you look at the brightest stars in this league, a lot of them are East Coast ballers. A lot of them are Kevin Durant from D.C. A lot of them are LeBron from Akron. A lot of them are Donovan from New York, right? Like his roots are in New York now, right? I mean, that's his home essentially. So you understand why he wants to be a Knick or a Net, but that doesn't mean he's going to actively fight his way out.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, there are very few situations in this league where you get to play in your hometown, and Io DeSumo with the Bulls, or, you know, like Kevin Durant could have gone to D.C. He didn't. He went to Brooklyn.
Why do you think D Wade wanted to be a Bull?
You know,
for
like,
a minute?
I just think that when you're Donovan Mitchell, that you have a set of circumstances that would frustrate you. If put yourself, and I don't know how many people in our audience can even do it, but put yourself in a 20-something black man's body, put yourself in his life, and understand that it's about winning and impacting the community.
Yeah.
And you're not really allowed to do either one. And you really don't have control over anything but what's happening on the basketball court, and you don't decide wins and losses.
Yeah. So
I mean,
what do you decide?
I think you have to have some empathy for where Don is. And I think Utah is, listen, I have said this openly. We choose to live in Utah. I can live anywhere I want to live. I make good money. I can afford to live anywhere I want to live. I choose to live in Salt Lake City because it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
But there are some challenges just like anywhere else, and Donovan is dealing with that.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. It is what it is. Poor Man's Ride says Donovan must learn how to be LeBron playoff.
Yeah, I think
I don't
that
disagree
there's
with that.
credence to that.
Positive Takes Only says the Jazz need to mix things up. And Garcia says Tanner Plummer, all talking heads for the Jazz will tell you over and over that they will have an excellent player development program. They do not have an excellent player development program. Hey, D. Will was amazing in my opinion.
Yeah, but like I think Darren Williams was like
a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I mean Darren Williams is not even anywhere close to what Donovan Mitchell is to this organization, in my opinion.
And Coach and Darren Williams, I mean, look, Jerry was a difficult guy to play for if you were bucking the system. And I think I think Darren was bucking the system. There's no doubt about that.
Was he fun to watch? Hell yeah. That crossover was still fire, even as a Brooklyn net, dude. Like,
yeah, it was fun to watch him play.
Like, he's a fun player to watch, but he's not Donovan Mitchell.
Jeremy Bolton says, also can't wait to talk about Draymond's insecurities about Rudy Gobert. Like, what is his deal? Whether he's better than Rudy or not, why is he obsessed and weird about it? I think Rudy Gobert has a lot of enemies around the NBA.
I think
good or bad.
That Draymond Green has all of you fooled. I think that he has everybody fooled. I think Draymond Green, one of the best abilities he has is to get in your head and have you thinking about him rather than thinking about your dog crap shooting percentage from the free throw line or anything that you control. And I think that Draymond Green understands that the Warriors have a decent chance of running into the Jazz and that all this is going to come back and Rudy's going to be concerned about what Draymond's been saying off the court instead of playing good defense. And that's what I think.
Which has been a problem for Rudy historically.
And that's what I think Draymond is actually doing. I don't think that Draymond is obsessed or some like weird guy.
Not at all.
Draymond has won championships. Draymond is the core of that team. Dude, he knows what he's doing.
He knows how to win the mental game. He's an old school player.
Yes.
He is a 90s, late 80s, 90s player.
Yes.
He'd have dominated in that era, and he dominates now. But
yes.
I think he understands the game.